It's great to have you join me again on TMI. At this point, we're going to be having threads of conversation, which will be on the fuel subsidy saga and the federal government policy on its removal. And also, we're looking at the presidential race ahead 2023, the quest for quality leadership. Discussing this with me, starting from my immediate left, I have an erudite politician, public affairs analyst, and he is Honorable Fred Oyigwe. Thanks for joining me, Fred.
I thank you for having me. Good morning to you, viewers.
And also next to him, I have an articulate young man, and he is a political economist, Ibrahim Momo. Thank you for joining me, Ibrahim.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, distinguished viewers.
It's always the responsibility of the government and, of course, key stakeholders to ensure that we have a better polity. The responsibility also falls on the followers. And as we look at the fuel subsidy saga that has been hitting hard, well, it's been greeted. We've been having this discussion every time, on the need to have the right timing to remove fuel subsidy. Otherwise, if the timing factor is not paid attention at, then a lot that the government would lose, But just recently, the government really rescinded on its decision to remove or terminate the fuel subsidy by June. Rather, they extended it beyond June, and there is the need for the federal government to fund the budget in order for it to tackle that aspect. So what do you make of this development, Fred?
The truth is that, as many economists have put it in perspective, is that there's a lot of fraud embedded in the fuel subsidy policy and program. In that, we don't seem to be certain as to how much volume of fuel is consumed on a daily basis. We have heard of budget padding, and so it is not unexpected that those who import fuel will also pad the amount of fuel they import, knowing that they will receive subsidies. So the only thing that we can actually do to overcome that is to completely deregulate fuel importation. Give licenses to as many as those who want to import fuel, let them do so, and let them all go to the market. Let the market forces determine the price. The savings from the fuel subsidy can be used for the development of infrastructure. It is in perfect competition that the consumers benefit the most. So, continuing to pay subsidy, it's continuing to fund the irregularities, or rather, the fraud associated in the skewed volume of petroleum products being imported. The savings from the petroleum products can be dedicated to the revamping of the refineries so that we can be self-sufficient in that regard. There is no way that, as a matter of fact, if we're to be able to revamp our refineries, given the capacity of the Dangote refinery under construction, and the hope that in a very short time it's going to be launched, we might even begin to be able to export petroleum products, because we will then have excess of our daily consumption. But the only way we can ascertain for certain what our daily consumption is by deregulating the petroleum importation.
Okay, but again, let's not forget.
So, like the minister has said, the intention was first to remove the subsidy that the finance minister I'm talking about. The intention was to remove the petroleum subsidy at the beginning of this year. But by opinion survey, they decided that that should be extended
to June
of next year. And that the budget was actually drawn up or calculated
to fund it till June.
To fund the petroleum subsidy until June.
Okay.
But now we are hearing about another extension. So I just take that to be an extension or a continuation of the fraud that is associated with it.
You seem not to be happy with the extension. You seem not to be happy with the sustenance of the subsidy. But again, don't you think this decision came up as a result of the challenges that the government may face if it goes about removing it so abruptly? Because they've always said that, stakeholders have always said that timing is of the essence.
Look, there's no time that is right to remove the subsidy. Okay? This government came into power telling us that they will be able to sell petrol at 50 naira per liter. That's what, because it was 93 naira per liter when they came into power. And we thought we were going to have something better. Today we are paying 165 naira. And they are now telling us that they are subsidizing the petroleum by over 200 naira per liter. So where are we? But like economists have deduced, the so-called subsidy fund goes to fund the inflation that is associated with the devaluation of naira, mostly. So for us to be able to keep abreast with, you see, there's no way that a consumer can be able to benefit from producers if the cost associated with production of goods and services is not determined by market forces.
Okay.
So if market forces were to determine one of the components of production costs, which is petroleum or petroleum products, then that will give a better picture of what the actual cost is. And that will enable us to be able to compete in the international market.
Okay.
Should we desire to export?
All right.
Or
all right. Thank you very much, Fred. Well, let's get your opinion, Ibrahim, because we look at the huge amount of money, you know, the government is saying that they are subsidizing petrol. About 241 naira on every liter. And it's been reported by the NNPC Limited that we consume about 19.3 billion liters of petrol every year. So putting it at about 1.6 billion monthly. And then you look at about 4.6 trillion naira used. You know, it's quite huge. Now, do you think the decision of the government to extend the funding beyond June is right?
Well, I think it is right that government continues to subsidize petroleum products.
In spite of the humongous amount?
That is because government exists on behalf of, it is not economic sense. It does not make economic sense, you know, to do that. Macroeconomic sense doesn't. But at the micro level, the family level, the individual level, the government has no choice but to continue to subsidize, you know, because, you know, the challenge with the debate about subsidy removal or non-removal is beclouded by the pricing template, the pricing argument, that if we were to remove petrol subsidy, if you had 155 and to 140, had 241 to 155, you are talking
about 400.
407
naira per liter.
Yes.
Who's going to pay that?
That is the actual cost, actual landing cost of petroleum products in Nigeria. So when we are fixated on price factor or a matrix, we are beclouding the core issues. The first point to make is that every government around the world subsidizes one sector of the economy or the other. In fact, in Nigeria, the aviation sector has been subsidized, the egg sector has been subsidized. These are even taking much more subsidy than petroleum product is taking.
Really?
Now, but the challenge with subsidy, particularly fuel subsidy, is that whereas most countries in the world who are subsidizing, the US subsidizes its agricultural industry, subsidizes its aviation industry, subsidizes the steel industry. Most countries in the world do that. Okay. Whereas in countries who know what they are doing, they are subsidizing production. In Nigeria and in some other backward countries.
But subsidizing consumption.
Consumption is what we are subsidizing. What the government is spending is on reducing the cost of the raw product that the consumers, the average Nigerian consumes, which is where the challenge is.
You were the challenge.
So, the issue is not with subsidy. The issue is we are subsidizing consumption instead of production. I would have advised, ordinarily, that when you ask the question, Nigeria is a net exporter of petroleum products. How come that of crude oil? How come that country is a major importer of finished petroleum products?
It doesn't tally.
There are two things that are wrong there.
Okay.
One, this is something we have. Ideally, we should do the entire value chain up to refining and then export finished, refined petroleum products. That's where we ought to be. Nigeria should be exporting refined petrol, kerosene, aviation fuel. 23 we should be exporting those things. What are we exporting? We are exporting the crude oil as raw. What that does at multiple levels is that it's killing our economy.
Yes, we've had this discussion all over again, and ways at which we can really bounce back and ensure that we make our refineries work, and all of these licenses given to artisans or to set up modular refineries. But again, we seem not to be making progress. Or what do you think?
Which is where I was getting to that. The point is that if government could, for 1 year, you see, when government bought into the Dangote refinery, people were raising hula balloon. I said that makes economic sense. Government should be invested in local refining, even if it means subsidizing those who have modular refineries, or even the big refinery like Dangote. Let government invest our subsidy regime into those areas. We have about, I think at the last count, about 19 modular refineries license issued. How come we are not, even in Edo, we had one. In Imo, I think one was already on stream in Imo. If we have all these ones in play, even in the case of rivers, with all the noise about refinery, illegal bunkering, the context is that we have the local capacity. If you have illegal refineries, it means that there is refining capability locally. But it is illegal, it is not sanctioned by law. The government has not approved that. That is what makes it illegal. It's not because it's not able to do it. Why not, for example, we gather our local capacity, we upskill them, train them, empower them. Why not, for example, we subsidize even those local refineries so that it moves from illegal to legal. So the point, first of all, is we need to clear the point. There's nothing wrong with subsidy. The challenge is that we are subsidizing imported consumption.
Okay.
The products are refined abroad. So the cost of refining in wherever we are importing from, whether it's the UK, the cost of freight, bringing them back to this country, all these are built into that cost. That's why we are talking about landing costs.
Okay. But if the government wants to do that, like I'm afraid, because looking at the large volume of liters of petrol that will be consumed, like monthly and yearly, even if you set up the local refineries, even if you give licenses to modular refineries and all that to pop up, are we sure we can meet up with the challenges of the volumes of liters being consumed? Or do you think there's no sincerity in that production level? Fred?
You see, when you encourage local production, you should also expect, you can make projections.
Okay.
You should also expect that in the process of time, capacity will increase. Yeah. There will be attraction into the industry. If the profit margin is attractive enough, people will adjust their portfolios, their business portfolios, to be able to go into the areas that have a high and attractive
business prospects. Yes, that's true.
And that is what we expect to see.
Okay.
Knowing that right now, what we have is a case of high consumption compared to the demand.
Okay.
Ability to produce.
Our
Ability to produce, yes.
produce.
Yes.
So, naturally, the natural trend will be for a lot of those who have the capacity and capability to produce, to go into that area.
Okay.
And what the government could do is to make sure that our regulatory organ or our regulatory department is robust enough to be able to regulate them technically and financially, and then to support such processes, to make sure that those who are going into that field are regulated and they do it within the ambit of.
We just hope that the government is thinking in this direction, because indefinitely it's extending the funding on the subsidy regime beyond July, beyond June, I mean, from July 1. And we don't know when that's going to end, because for a government that wants to succeed, you know, in this venture, all of this you're saying should have been started. What do you think?
Well,
Brian?
I think that the reason why the government is interested in removing subsidy is because for every dime, every kobo that we are putting into subsidy, we're taking away from other critical sectors, health, education, you know, and so on and so forth. For every the money that we have is limited, you know. So for every kobo we are in, and you can look at the figures, you know, you quoted earlier. You show that this is not several trillions of naira annually. These are things that could have gone in. If you put $1 trillion naira extra into our educational sector, it will change. If you put $1 trillion into health, it will change. It definitely, significantly.
Not just to put it in, but to also spend it judiciously.
Yeah, no, of course, no.
So let's not forget
the current budget allocation.
Okay.
To those sectors, those critical sectors, add $1 trillion naira each to those budgetary allocation. You're going to see
it will boost the prospects.
Very well, it's very much. So there's actually economic sense in government wanting to remove subsidy. But the downside is that government exists on behalf of the people. And so if you increase a liter of fuel to 405 naira, it's going to cause immense economic hardship on the people.
Of course, basically.
You know, so it is that balancing act that government has to contend that's making them wanting to remove and not able to remove.
So with this now, the government will have to contend with the capacity, contend with the act of developing capacity.
Yeah, local capacity.
Local capacity, you know.
To refine petroleum products.
Yes, to refine petroleum products before it's
and government can, seriously, what I think government should do is to subsidize those who are truly interested in local refining.
Okay. By so doing, subsidizing production.
All these modular refineries, why is government not extending maybe 0% interest loans?
Okay.
Or
to make it attractive.
Single-digit interest loans to them. And it makes economic sense. If Nigeria is a net exporter, producer and refiner and exporter of refined petroleum products, this whole issue of our naira devaluation will vanish.
That's a smart one.
It will vanish altogether. Generally, so when it was 97 naira, the exchange rate was 1 naira to $1. Today, it's between 4.15 and 5.70 to $1.
All right.
And you expect that it cannot be a fair when we are importing this.
All right, thank you. I know, Fred, you have one or two.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Okay.
Fuel is not the only driver of costs for the producer. So, take for example, what has happened to rice, okay? The prices of rice. Rice sold at the beginning of this administration for about 12,000 naira. I think even 8,000 naira to 12,000 naira. Today it's about 38,000 naira, okay? And people use that as a measure to increase all other prices. The fuel that is consumed as a result of production, when quantified, varies for the different users. Okay? For some, it's just as minimal as 2-3%. So it's not going to impact too much on the cost of production. And it is what impacts on the cost of production that we should be more worried about rather than what the people consume.
Okay.
You see, if market forces are allowed to determine the prices of products, in this case petroleum products, then people will be more judicious in their use of the product.
Thank you. Fred Uyigwe is a business expert alongside being a politician, and big thanks for this contribution and also the political economy as well. We're going to be extending the frontiers of this discussion after this break. It's awesome to know you're still here, and it's TMI. While we had that break, we enjoyed the privilege to have the presence of the former SSA to the governor at the state on legal matters, and he is a constitutional lawyer, Notary Public of Nigeria, erudite at that. And we want to say big thanks for joining us, Adams Aliyu. Thank you for coming, Adams Aliyu.
Thank you very much for good viewers.
All right, I hope you had a bad session navigating through the traffic.
Well, it's a busy day, so
Okay.
we have to join the queue.
All right.
I was a bit late.
Okay, we just hope that governance will make the traffic ease off as the time progresses. Because when you were the SSA to the governor, on legal matters, yes, I know you brought value to governance. So, if we are to look at what we are having at present, would you say that there is improvement in terms of the administration under Obaseki as a way of digression?
Okay.
I'm asking you, would you say there's improvement in terms of the traffic congestion or management?
Well, more people are having cars.
Okay.
Population is increasing.
Okay.
So it's normal.
All right.
Traffic congestion is transient. 10 minutes, it will be clear.
All right. State TMI, we're looking at the 2023 presidential race ahead 2023, looking at the need for us to bring a viable politics into ensuring that we have viable leadership. Well, what is going on the minds of Nigerians this time around is who's going to be the successor of President Muhammadu Buhari, and what party is going to produce or bring that successor to emergence. And this basically is making political parties to run at a very high speed to ensure that they feed candidates on the platforms to run for that highest office of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the office of the president. Well, Adams Aliyu, what do you make of this challenge? Because Nigerians seem fed up of the challenges we are faced with in the areas of insecurity, in the areas of economy, and of course even the act of tackling corruption. And it was on these three capsules that President Muhammadu Buhari came on board in 2015. And Nigerians seem not to be satisfied with the performance so far. So what do you make of the yardstick that should be measured by political parties in feeding candidates in this position?
Well, when election is coming, there will be manifesto. You just reiterated that when in 2015 or so, present government's party, they came on board, talking of this, talking of that, etc. Now, they are in the seat of power, and things don't seem to be ameliorating, so many people are not satisfied. It's expected, but they have a yardstick. They have the litmus test on February next year to choose who they want. And what are the parameters? We talked of party politics, yes. Section 65 talks of the requirements to be a candidate, let us say, for government. You must belong to a political party. You must be fielded by that party. If so facto, there is no independent candidates, as it were in the First Republic, 1959, independent, etc. You must be a member of a political party, and that party will field you. So that is why the party with majority will take its way. And when you look at it, the Constitution is very clear. It is open to everyone to contest to be president of this country. And the Constitution does not even have zoning enshrined, encapsulated. The Constitution is not there. But what happens is that some political parties have zoning. But the Constitution is clear, chapter 1, section 1, that the Constitution is supreme.
Okay.
Any other person not adhering with the Constitution is no longer.
Okay, but before we come to the aspect of the zoning, you made mention of as in every aspirant must belong to a political party. So that means we're looking at the aspect where they'll be given a level playing field, to contest.
Yes.
But there is this challenge that comes with the electoral law or electoral amendment crisis. Electoral Act, yes. The crisis in the direction where the amendment is coming with different issues, like the Senate approving that of consensus, while the House of Rep is rejecting. Now, how do we tackle this? Because it's been said that a lot of aspirants, who really have the credentials, have the qualities, the attributes, the characteristics to become this in this position, they are taken away by virtue of consensus that has been used to take them away and put in those candidates that may not augur well for the people. So what do you think about that? Isn't that a challenge?
Yes, no amendment will prescribe only one method of electing candidate. There are options. Meaning that a party can go on consensus. Meaning all parties consensus at the all the party will agree that Mr. A, you are our candidate.
Okay, but how does that party choose that? Do they carry the entire party members along? Because that's the challenge. Because if they carry the party members along, then democracy can be met in that direction.
The leadership of the party. When democracy started far away in Greece, they were few. They assembled together, and they all agreed together. But now we have representative democracy. World leaders are there. Local government chairman, it's even the people we elected in the House of Rep and Senate, they are representing us. That is why before you can remove a president or governor, it must be 2/3. So it is those leaders that we talk among themselves and agree. And it's not that they are going to call on 200 million Nigerians. No. Okay. So if they do that, they will put consensus as an option. Then there's majority votes, which is there's no constitution that will prescribe one as a sine qua non, that this is the only way. So if the person is very popular, leadership of the party can say go by consensus. If not, you go to the field.
Okay. Frederick Igwe, are you okay with the interventions by the National Assembly over this Electoral Act Amendment Bill?
I'm not okay by it, because I believe that democracy, it's not my belief, actually, what democracy ought to be is a system that empowers the electorate. Everybody should be able to participate. Okay. In intervening or attempting to intervene, because the National Assembly seems to be at variance with the executive on the issue, because the National Assembly wanted
the direct primary model.
A direct primary model of electing aspirants or candidates to represent the different parties. And the presidency doesn't believe that should be the case.
Okay, but do you see the direct primary as more in prison? Talking about democracy.
The direct primary, it's more proper, it is more enfranchising than the indirect primary, because the indirect primary is what has made us suffer what we have suffered as long as we have suffered.
Okay, but it's still, in the amendment, it's still left there.
Yes.
They didn't delete it from the amendments. But the challenge is, will they go there?
But we know that the political parties are controlled by a handful of people who have hijacked these political parties because they have deep pockets. They are money bags. We want to remove the influence of money bags from the control of the political parties and control of the democratic process as a whole. And to be able to do that, we have to rejig what we call the ballot access. Ballot access is a system that allows those who are interested in participatory politics to be able to participate without the extraneous demands that is incapable for them to meet.
Okay.
Like nomination forms now. To be able to acquire nomination forms, especially with the major parties, major political parties, PDP and APC, you need maybe 5 million naira for not nomination form, I mean expression of interest form.
Okay.
Then for the nomination form, you need about 35 or 40 million naira. That immediately disenfranchises a whole lot of Nigerians because it makes it impossible for those who are
not money bags.
Yes, who are not money bags.
And it's non-refundable.
And it's not refundable.
It's not refundable.
So it makes it impossible.
So where are they going to get that money?
For those who will otherwise be popular.
Yeah, so.
Who will otherwise be popular and more acceptable to the electorate, not to be able to even participate in the process.
Okay.
I want to cite the United States model, for example. In the United States, to participate in presidential election, all you need to do is have $500. $500. How much is $500? About $500,000 naira. Is all you need. No, not even up to 250,000 naira. It's about what you need. 500, and you register with your own state secretary of state to participate as an aspirant or a candidate for your political party. In the absence of that, if you do not even have the 500 naira, you are able to gather 10,000 signatures.
Okay.
That will substitute for your 500 naira. So everybody who...
You mean $500?
Your $500. So everybody who wants to participate can come out and participate. I remember, if I'm not wrong, 2007 or 2011, their presidential election, they had 92 candidates vying. But at the end of the day, one president emerged. What our political parties want to do is take the easy road out. The easy road, that is by getting the political gladiators.
Yeah, the leaders.
The deep pockets.
To
make the most contribution. One comes up with, if you have 10 candidates, all paying 50 million each, then you have 500 million. Because they do not want to do the work of raising money.
Okay.
Which is one of the determinants of the leadership of a party, whether or not they are able to gather enough support from the people.
Okay,
by collecting two naira here and 5 naira there to show that yes, they have support.
So this restrains a huge percentage of others not to be able to participate.
Because it now allows only those who can gamble that 40 or 50 million naira away, either because they stole it or they didn't work hard for it.
Oh, okay. Let's get your viewpoint on this, Ibrahim.
Well, there are a couple of issues that we have moved from the issue of the Electoral Act to party financing and the rest. So, but generally, on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, I think the president had made some sense when he said that you can't force political parties to adopt one, even in the U.S., we could refer to the U.S., it's not direct primaries alone. There are states who do direct primaries.
Different modes.
There are states who do indirect primaries, and there are states who do the all call consensus in the U.S. primaries in the U.S. So I think that we need to put that one in place. So political parties ought to be given the freedom to elect what system they want to use in adopt in selecting their candidates. So I think on that, I'm with the National Assembly.
You're on the same page.
And then on the little issue of consensus, I think that what normally happens is that in the process of lawmaking, there's always going to be a conference arrangement between the Senate and the House of Rep, where they harmonize their positions on a particular bill before them, before it is eventually transferred to the president. So there's going to be a way of harmonizing. Okay. And then we'll come to the issue of political party politics and financing of politics. I think that from my background in political science, I could say that with all sincerity, we do not have political parties in Nigeria. If you look at the concept of political parties, how political parties ought to be, ideally, political parties are bottom up. Individuals of like mind across a particular geographical location, maybe the country or the state, come together and have common purpose, come together on common purpose, and register a party, and then they elect their leaders. Secondly is that parties ought to have ideology. These are what they stand for. We had that experience in the First Republic in Nigeria. You know what Awo and his party stood for. You know what Shagari, there was clear delineation. And then what we have today is people moving like chess pieces. You see an Autumn and an Obaseki moving from the APC to PDP. You are seeing a Dave Umahi and a Cross-River State Governor, Ben Ayade, moving from the PDP to the...
So this is not a healthy practice for democracy?
Nigeria does not...
Are you saying it's not a healthy practice for democracy?
We do not even have political parties. Let's put it in
okay, because it's the lack of ideology that is making this
more than
defections.
And then even the funding of those parties, which is the core issue we are looking at.
Yes.
It is the members that fund political parties. The political party, you subscribe to the party, you are part of electing their leaders, and then you are part of those who are funding. You are paying your dues as political party members. It is that dues that collected. But what you see from 1990 to date, particularly with the Obasanjo becoming president, is that it is, you're not seeing, rather than a party having a leader, you are seeing the elected official at the presidency or at the state level assuming the position of a leader. I am now the leader of your party. Almost entirely trying to disrupt or destroy the party structure. And that, for example, if you look at Edo, PDP Edo, that is a challenge. The governor, having defected, attempted to assume the party leadership.
Okay, but they passed that page. They passed that page. Or are they still on the page?
They are still there, without due respect. They are still there. The party leaders, a party executive pushing back. And that there's a confusion going on. It may not be blown out of proportion, but there is that disagreement is still there. And I hope that they can resolve it.
Okay.
So, but the real issue...
In the presidential system of government, the elected head of government usually is the head of the party.
In US,
okay. Now that you've raised
in the United States, that is what the practice
the
is.
US,
the president is the head of his political party.
You're not correct, sir.
That
No,
what
of the
executive. They do have.
Okay, Ibrahim has the floor. Ibrahim has the floor.
Excuse me.
Ibrahim has the floor, please. Let
No,
Ibrahim.
we have to be clear.
Yeah, but Ibrahim has the floor.
It's confusing. Let the listeners.
Whatever you have to say, just write it
I think
down.
that
I'll come back to you.
for record purpose, let us not mislead
Our viewers, yes.
In a presidential system, it is not the president that is the leader of the party.
At all.
Correct.
He is the leader.
Okay, we'll find that out after this program, but for the sake of the show, let Ibrahim ventilate his opinion, please. So Ibrahim, you still have the floor, please.
But go ahead. But I have to make that. I have to make that.
You make it when it comes to you. When the pendulum swings to you, you will make it. I'll show you. Just ensure you're going to do
I have no basis for that statement.
I do have.
I
mean, we can. Anybody can Google that.
Okay, let him round off on his point. He has just a minute.
Let's conclude on the point by saying that when you have real political parties, when you have parties that are parties in the real sense of the concept on the word, you are going to have that's the beginning of political development of a country. When you have the parties as political parties, real parties, not political associations or contraptions, you're going to have. That's how society develops.
Okay.
The party holds is elected people. The elected leaders are members of the party. The party calls them to question. When they are acting, and then they have ideology. These are what we stand for. Are we for free education or for private sector-driven education system?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's push this conversation and look at just as you raised it, and I think let's dwell on this aspect of the ruling or progressive Congress, the seemingly national crisis that seemed to engulf the party and even ahead of the convention. What do you make? I think you see a member of the party. So what do you make? What do you see as the prognosis, of this party producing the next president come 2023?
The party, the APC you talked of, is the sitting government in power as at now. They are having a convention in February. Attempts were made here and there to postpone and repostpone, but there must be a convention.
But the party crisis is still festering. What do you think?
The party factory, they are lateral, they are by the side. It will not affect the convention of the party.
You sure it won't?
Yeah, very well. Even when people wanted a convention before the party, but that is tangential. What is supposed to be done is what is to be done. It is an omnibus assembly of the convention that can elect candidates, that can elect leaders. And when you have elected leaders, those are the de jure in law, according to law, the leaders of the party. But we are in a circumstance now when a big fish joins a party, he will arrogate to himself, or people will arrogate to him, leader. The word leader in that sense is just glorifying. To be specific, Chief Tony Anine was regarded as a leader.
Yes.
His name is not in INEC office. If he is in APC, for instance, APC has the name of the elected party chairman, secretary, and the rest. If they want to do anything, they will write to this leader. Not if a governor, like Asiwaju Tinubu is called leader. Any big man who went out takes that, but that is glorifying.
Okay.
The de facto people are those.
No,
The de facto people are those who were elected.
Yes.
The party has the chairman, has the secretary, and their names are with INEC. If INEC want to supervise primaries, if INEC want to do anything, they will not write to the governor of the state to say, we are coming to Edo State, we are INEC, you are PDP, you are governor, you are leader of the party, we are coming. It does not concern it. Okay. But it is just glorifying.
Okay.
That big
we may not have time to touch all of these areas, but let's look at what you raised earlier, because I like posing what you say to you in another capsule of question. Okay. Now, you raised the aspect of the zoning, for instance, which is basically a challenge, and political parties are finding their ways to ensure that they tackle this. Now, the rotational presidents or zoning of the presidency, some are saying, well, it should leave the north and come over to the south or come over to the west.
There is constitution.
Don't you think the ruling or progressive Congress, may be having a challenge if it zones it again, or what do you think about it?
There is convention. Convention is not written down, but it's binding. Okay. There is custom. There is usage along the time. The Constitution leaves it free. You must be such and such years of age, belong party, that's all. And it did not specify that one tribe will produce a president, next tribe is not there. Although some parties have it in their own constitution.
Okay, but don't you think it makes sense?
Don't you
think it makes sense for it to be rotational?
That's what I'm saying.
In order to keep the unity of the country? Because some are saying that the unity of the country may be in jeopardy if it doesn't happen.
If on the other semi-demi quasi party has it in its constitution, it does not affect the ground norm. The ground norm is the constitution. It's binding on everybody. Anybody is free to contest. We have seen cases where the big party will feel candidate, a minor party will feel candidate Labour. If he loses, let him lose. But if the circumstances are different, if there is consensus ad idem, all the parties have agreed, okay, because of the extraordinary circumstances in 1999, the Yoruba man won an election, was not sworn in. With the other tribes and parties, we are not feeling candidates. We zone it to only Southwest.
Okay.
But the second,
so by consensus arrangement,
that
it can be
done. But presently, it's not in pari material.
Okay, again, I ask you because I want you to be firm and be direct. Don't you think it makes sense by consensus arrangement to zone it back?
The circumstances are not in pari material. They are not exactly the same thing. So let us play along. Let those who are interested contest the election.
Okay, thank you.
Vox populi.
Thank you. What's your idea or perspective about the zoning arrangement?
For all the groups in Nigeria to feel...
You're saying groups now, not political parties.
Man, you talk about tribes.
I'm saying groups. You
to have a feel of presidency.
You may take that as tribes or zones.
Okay.
For them to feel
or regions.
Or regions.
Yeah.
For them to believe that they are part of the process.
Yeah.
They are part of the whole. You have to have an inclusive system that allows them.
That allows rotational.
That accommodates everybody.
Okay.
And in circumstances where some feel left out, you have to take extraneous steps to make sure that they do not feel left out.
Don't you think that's where this aspect of zoning and rotational presidency comes in?
And like he has said, like a high-rank lawyer has said, The ground norm does not provide for that, for zoning. Okay? But nonetheless, by convention of the political parties,
By consensus arrangement.
by
Yes. You lobby.
where is it? By consensus arrangement.
Yes, exactly.
But-
To use this word.
Excuse me.
America said lobby.
So use the words
by
of the
lobby.
constitutional lawyer.
By whose consensus? That's the problem. By whose consensus? By what level of consensus? Is it by just a handful of people who call themselves the leaders of the party, who now impose their will on the people? So we don't want an imposition. That's what I was going to say about what our brother here talked about.
Okay.
In the United States, that the United States, they also have consensus arrangement. You can call it consensus, but
All
it's
right.
actually the electoral college.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
College system.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we are pressed for time. I will allow you to speak on this before we call it a wrap in 1 minute.
Well, quickly, I think that whereas there is no provision in the Constitution for the issue of a rotational presidency or for zoning, I think by convention, by party dynamics, they tend to implement. I think in the PDP constitution, which is subject to the Nigerian constitution, they have zoning there, but the APC does not have it there. But what you haven't seen is that even beyond rotational presidency between north and south, you are seeing that there are micro zoning being agitated for now. You are having the southwest, for example, in the APC, you are seeing the southwest and the southeast, particularly, jostling for who will produce the candidate. And then you are seeing that even the PDP that has zoning is not even saying that for need to win majority votes, they need to zone the presidential ticket to the north again.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to look at this as it unfolds, because all of this we are saying seem to be talked in the womb of time, and only time can tell as we look at this projection. Big thanks, Adam Saliu, the constitutional lawyer in our midst, for taking our time to be part of this show. And of course, a big thanks to you, Fred Uyigwe, a politician and business expert, taking our time. And of course,
thank you for having
to our political economist, articulated that. Big thanks to you, Ibrahim Momo.
The pleasure is mine.
Those what time can permit is still TMI. Don't you go away.